Hey, practice owners, welcome back to another edition of Coming Back Stronger. I'm really excited to have our guest on today, Corbin Cowan from Vivos Therapeutics. Corbin has sort of an interesting story. We were talking beforehand, one of these firsthand things. They are really taking the world of sleep by storm. He'll tell you about their dental solution to a medical problem. I wanted to talk to Corbin and sort of integrate Vivos into our conversation about coming back stronger, in that as dentistry evolves, post-corona, we'll call it, or post-COVID, however you want to phrase it, dentistry is going to have to do things differently. If you're a drill, fill, and bill insurance practice, that's going to be hard, very hard to be profitable, especially coming back after this. But if you're a practice that adds things in and understands that you're a healthcare provider, which your patients already do, but are going to be more attuned to it. They're going to be more attuned to PPE and aerosols and things that 90 days ago they'd never even heard of. They're going to look to you differently. And what we're seeing on the back end of this is that something we may get into here is a complete health practice, a practice that is a dentist who adds in different elements than dentistry, are thriving right now. In fact, as we come back this week and we've done sort of a poll or a call around, those practices are at least equal or better, doing more production than they did before coronavirus came along, because their patients want to get back. They want to know that it's safe. They want their doc and their practice talking about more than just fixing my teeth. They have a different dialogue and conversation. I think this fits in really well, and it's a good time to look into sleep if you haven't done it yet. So with that, Corbin, how you doing?
Doing well.
You're in, well, so we were talking ahead of time, and you kind of have an interesting story that leads up to literally yesterday. So if you would maybe start off with what Vivos is and does, and then, you kind of have a really, I'll set you up for that. And anybody who's listening, it's one of those, you think this guy's making it up, and amazing timing. So I'll kind of let you start and finish how, you're not just part of the company, but I guess the company's part of you in a sense now.
It is now, for sure.
Yeah.
So, my background, Steve, is I invest in small up and coming companies. And when I do that, I generally try to take a position that will help influence the growth of the company. Mm-hmm. So when I first found Vivos, and Vivos is really the only potentially curative solution for sleep apnea in the marketplace.
Okay. And
so being more on the finance end, I didn't really know much about sleep apnea. I had a medical doctor that helped me do the due diligence on Vivos and on their therapy and that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And so when he kind of gave it the green light, emphatically, he gave it the green light and said that he felt like it could be the biggest discovery in medicine in the last 30 years. Mm-hmm. I got pretty excited. And through this process, I was learning about it. And when I first met the CEO, Kirk Huntsman, he asked me, do you have sleep apnea? And I said, no, I sleep just fine. And he said, well, you should get it checked out. Or at least, get a sleep test. So, I wanted to know what our patients are going through anyway. Mm-hmm. And so I decided to get the sleep test, and it came back that I stopped breathing 33 times an hour for 10 seconds or more.
Holy cow. Yeah.
So in the medical community, they call that the apnea index, mm-hmm. AHI index. And so my AHI was 33, which classified me as severely sleep apnea, having severe sleep apnea. But again, I was thinking to myself, well, I've got the only potentially curative solution to the problem right here. So I went through the process, and I got my custom made oral device from one of our providers. And mm-hmm. And on Friday, March 1st of 2019, I got a call. He said, your device is in. Come in Monday morning and we'll get you started in your treatment. And I said, great. So that was about 4 o'clock. At 5:30, my wife was rushing me to the hospital because I was having a stroke. So what I had no idea of is that you're 83% more likely to have a stroke if you have undiagnosed sleep apnea. And I can now trace the signs and symptoms clear back to when I was a kid. Struggling getting out of bed in the morning, never feeling rested after sleeping, all those kinds of things. I just kind of deemed it, I'm just not a morning person, right? But now I realize I just wasn't getting good restful sleep. And so through that whole process, they discovered that I had a hole in my heart that's called a patent foramen anomaly. And it's a small hole that is where the blood flowed when you were a baby because you didn't need blood and oxygen, your lungs weren't formed and all that kind of stuff. So when you take your first breath, the pathway of the blood changes direction and it goes from the upper ventricles down to the lower and into the lungs. And that hole in between the upper 2 ventricles of the heart is supposed to seal up and shut. Well, mine did not. And so yesterday, I had a procedure where they go up and they put a little clamp in there and clamp it together. And so now my heart's better and I'm sleeping better. My AHI over the last year has since I've been in treatment now for about a year has gone from 33 to 4. So I'm just about to the point where I clinically no longer have sleep apnea. But what was really interesting is I was sitting there getting admitted into the cath lab and everything for this procedure yesterday. I kept hearing the same conversation. They came in, they asked me, all the thing, all the medical history and, have you had a stroke? Yes, I've had a stroke. And then the very next question was, do you have sleep apnea? Yes, I've got sleep apnea. So as I listened to all these other conversations that were going on, I heard 4 or 5 conversations between the nurses and patients of people that have had a stroke and they all had sleep apnea. And I'm like, I wanted to just get out of my chair and go hand them a business card and be like, you don't have to be on a CPAP for the rest of your life. I've got something better. But really, it's some really exciting stuff that we've got going on. And it's really exciting to be able to help practice owners latch on to something that has such a transformational, it is really life-changing for the patients.
Well, and we were talking ahead of time, and you own a dental practice or an owner in a dental practice, and then I think Kirk has a lot of years experience with a large dental organization. So you guys have a dental background, and I think that's the cool marriage right there. Is the way you put it. I love it. A dental solution to a medical problem. Everybody you saw yesterday or heard yesterday, Corbin, I mean, they go to the dentist, or they should be going to the dentist. So it's not that these patients, are wandering. You've got to go get those patients. There's a number. I mean, how many of these patients in a typical dental office? Do you have any numbers on how, like, if I have a practice of 12 or 1,500 patient base, how many of them are they have this situation?
Yeah. So in a typical dental practice of 12 to 1,500, and this is a very conservative number, you're going to have 300 to 500 of those patients that are prime candidates for the Vivos treatment.
They have sleep problems today.
They have sleep problems today. Probably 90% of those people don't realize that they have sleep apnea. You're going to have 10 to maybe 15% of your patients that know that they already have sleep apnea. They're on a CPAP. They're, they hate it. I've never met a single CPAP wearer that just says, oh my gosh, I love this, device. I've several say, I love the way I feel now that I've got it, but they all hate wearing it.
And they love traveling with a CPAP.
Oh yeah.
It's awesome taking that to a hotel. And so those are in a dental practice right now. And you were telling me earlier, there's maybe like a series of questions, like you said. You suddenly somebody asked you, I think Kirk asked you this question, this question, this question, and suddenly you say, well, yeah, and yeah, and that's as complicated as it gets. Now, if you want to take diagnosis and treatment further, that's what we can talk about. But it all really starts with maybe a conversation in hygiene, or how does that work?
Yeah, I mean, it starts with just the opening questionnaire that you would put into your normal standard operating procedures.
Okay.
And when you really start to focus on more of a complete health approach, and you're asking questions, you're already asking, do you smoke, and have you ever had a heart attack, and all that kind of thing.
Right.
Well, you just kind of continue on with those. Do you wake up feeling rested? Do you ever feel like you stop breathing in the middle of the night? And just there's a series of questions that, do you, do you have headaches? Do you have migraines? Things like this that lead to an indication of sleep apnea. And of course, we provide all of those questionnaires and all those kinds of things, with Vivos. But I think that as I know that as you start to implement these things in your practice, that you'll start to see the prevalence of this condition. I was talking to somebody about COVID, and it's the obviously it's the biggest thing in the world right now, and it's a worldwide pandemic. But more people will die as a result of complications from sleep apnea this year than will from COVID.
Mm-hmm.
By a significant amount. This is the pandemic that nobody talks about.
Yeah, and it's preventable.
And it's completely preventable.
Mm-hmm.
And my stroke was completely preventable. Had I found Vivos a year or two earlier, the likelihood of me having that stroke would have gone down a significant amount. I can't say that I wouldn't have had it. I still had the hole in my heart, and I still had the potential for that clot to get through, which is what happened. But when I took my sleep test, my heart rate while I slept got up to 122 beats per minute.
Holy cow!
So when you stop breathing,
mm-hmm.
Your body is trying to get you to wake up or to get you to start taking that breath. So your heart rate increases, the stress on the body increase, you start to release adrenaline, all of those things, which is why you wake up feeling exhausted, because you've been in fight or flight all night long.
Mm-hmm.
And so that constant exercising of the heart over and over and over again, night after night, takes a toll.
So if I'm a practice owner and I'm watching this and I say, okay, I understand the sleep apnea part, and there are very few dentists on the clinical side, I think, that haven't seen something about sleep in a journal.
Right.
And they've seen it, and maybe they watched a video, or they took sat through a presentation at some meeting, and then they went back and got into their went back to normal when they got home. Today is different. Today is literally the world shut down. We're coming back, and if you're a practice owner, again, who wants to do that, it's going to be really hard to do. So if somebody who was watching listened to that and said, okay, what is Vivos for me as a dentist and a practice owner? How does it fit into my overall treatment planning? How does it fit into my practice? And what kind of production or revenue can I see off of it?
So the treatment, I believe, is the most profitable procedure in dentistry. I could be challenged on that. I'm not a dentist, but the margins are phenomenal.
Okay.
And so, it equates to doing about, 8 crowns in a day for one procedure, or 6 crowns in a day for one procedure.
Okay.
And so and the margins are really good. So you know, the average dentist is going to, you know, spend about $2,000 in costs and receive $8,000 in revenue for one procedure.
Okay.
So really good margins, really good business model. And like I said, you don't have to go looking for the patients. They're right there in your practice. And so you know, you talked about dentists that, you know, maybe see something or hear something at a weekend course or whatever, and they come back and then they get back in the groove of drill and fill and their normal day-to-day life and that kind of thing, and it kind of gets put on the shelf. Well, that's really what happened with this technology originally. When it was originally discovered, Dr. Singh, who was a dentist, an orthodontist, and a PhD in craniofacial development, he created this device and figured out that it, you know, had the effects that it did on sleep apnea, and he started to lecture on it like every good PhD does, right? And so he would have, he trained over 800 providers that did exactly that. They got the education, but they went back. There wasn't that clinical support. And so Vivos has created an entire business around this treatment.
Okay.
And so that's really kind of what sets us apart from other devices and other technologies in the marketplace is two things. One, ours is a curative solution. So I'm about probably 8 months. I've got about 8 months left of treatment. I've already come from, you know, a 33 AHI down to a 4. I anticipate that when I'm fully developed, I will no longer have any, you know, signs of sleep apnea whatsoever. That's not always the case, but dramatic improvements in your AHI are very, very consistent.
And that is one of the things that reason I reached out to you. You know, usually what I'll do is, you know, I talk to people that I know and trust in the industry, you know, sort of the opinion makers, the key opinion leaders, and I'll say, who's doing really well with this? And that was really one of the things that came back was, you know, there are a lot of docs who will go do all this clinical work and they'll understand it very clinically and they're ready. And their team doesn't get it. They don't have systems. They don't have marketing. They don't have a way to get the patients, or they don't have a language maybe to talk to the patients that are already in their office. And I think what you guys do, I think you said it, maybe you can explain that a little, is sort of, it's more about, it's not a clinical course that you come to and say, now I can do sleep, and you go back and you wait for things to happen and they don't. It's more of a, maybe program, for lack of a better term, that helps you mine those patients that are already there in your dental practice. And then, you know, the other question is always, you know, how do I get paid for it? Is it fee for service? My patients will never pay for that. I think you integrate medical billing or medical insurance, you know, dental medical billing. And that's hard to do if you're trying to do it yourself. And that's one of the solutions I think you guys have come up with, is how to do all of that in a package, we'll call it, that somebody who signs up. So I guess what I want to make sure that viewers and listeners understand is it's not a clinical course you take, you go back and then you do sleep. Because I think, you know, Corbin, I'll bet you some percentage of this audience has already done that. You know, they went to a sleep course and then they went back and waited and nothing happened. So can you kind of maybe highlight a little bit about what you do and how the you know, the program, I guess, itself works, how you integrate it into a practice?
Yeah, so that's the key, is the integration, right? Okay. So first of all, it's not just a course for the doctor, it's training for the staff as well. So right away, we get the staff involved in the conversation, involved in this transition into you know, having the conversations. And we do that by providing support both clinically and for the practice. And so there's some key components to that. Every new practice that comes on is assigned a clinical advisor. So the practitioner has a mentor, if you will, or, you know, an access point to a clinical provider that has done hundreds and completed hundreds of these cases. So that clinical advisor, to make sure that if they get a complicated case, they have a phone, to pick up, that, they can get a hold of somebody that's been through this and done it a bunch of times. So that's key to give that clinical confidence to the provider. Then we have what we call a practice advisor, which is really kind of like a coach for the staff, right? To make sure that they're having the conversations the right way, that the questionnaires are in the right spot, that if they have questions or they're starting to stumble over, the dialogue between the patients or something, that they have someone that they can call on that can coach them through, what's going on and dig into any problems. And they're assigned that person, so they always have that access point.
Okay.
Then you've got a market advisor, which is someone that helps you enroll into the program, but also helps your team develop marketing plans on how to go outside of the practice once you're ready for that. Again, you're going to have 300 to 500 patients within your practice that you can start with before you really need to start spending any money advertising or doing any of those types of things.
Okay.
The fourth component is the medical billing side. And in our training curriculum for you and your staff, there's a whole module on medical billing. So you get all of that training. But then we also have a third-party service that will do it for you, which I use in my practice. Even though I could probably set it up within my practice to do it myself, for me, it's not a financial benefit as much as it is a legal benefit, right? I know that when those claims are made and everything is documented with the service that that Vivos provides, which again I pay for outside of everything else, but I know it's done right, and so I don't have to worry about getting audited and having a medical insurance fraud case or something like that in my office.
So you have a clinical, a practice. What was the third advisor?
Market advisor.
Market advisor, and then somebody to help with the medical billing or help do that. I mean, those are really that's really where I think a lot of docs struggle. That's where the rubber meets the road.
Right.
Is you can have all these great clinical skills, but if you don't have a team that realizes that, you have 300, 400, 500 patients, so you don't immediately need to go out and look for patients. You can
Correct.
sort of, move into that realm, into the complete health realm now easily, where somebody 5 or 10 years ago, I mean, Corbin, I know I could probably off the top of my head name you a dozen docs who got into sleep, did all this training. And, when you ask them, you meet them at a Hinman or a Chicago Midwinter, and you say, hey, how you doing with sleep? Oh, that was a waste of money. They almost think I went through the training and patients didn't show up.
Right.
Well, there's more to it than that. And I think that's what you're seeing now. And then the second element is, I went through all this and the patients wouldn't pay for it. And you can't, because when you bill it under dental insurance, nothing's going to happen.
Right.
So you have to have that medical dental integration, and and it's not a video somebody can watch. I'm a big fan of doing what you do well, pay somebody else to do the stuff they do well. So if you have that component of medical billing, let the expert do it. I mean, do you see people trying to do the medical billing on their own, or do most of them just say, just pay for the service, stick with what we know, and let the experts do this?
There's a point in your practice when you get, and really my practice is a sleep and TMJ practice only.
Okay.
And we're doing 15, 20 cases a month, and so we're really at the point where we could bring it in house, but it's just something that I could maybe save a little bit of money, but then I'd be worried about, is this new person doing it right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So for me, it just hasn't made sense. But we do have providers that are doing it successfully, and they're, some of our clinical advisors do their own medical billing, and they're doing just fine. So it's really what you're comfortable with. But with me not being in the practice all the time, my personal comfort level comes from knowing that I have a medical billing specialist that's getting it right every time. And there may be a time where I want to bring on a medical billing person, but right now I'm happy with where it's at.
The other thing is you have somebody, excuse me, like with any employee, you have somebody that you spend a lot of money, time, energy teaching to do a certain thing. And then, it can be a double-edged sword. Suddenly they become valuable to, the guy down the street.
Right.
They don't, his up and running time is zero. You paid for some really good training. And the other thing is scalability. If you're doing one or two or three cases, and then it becomes 5, 6, or 7, your existing insurance person is trying to do it, or your front desk person / insurance coordinator is trying to do it. You're right. They're gonna be challenged by that. So there's scalability that you just don't have. And that's why I like to pay somebody to do these things, is I don't have to take one of my people away. And then if I lose them, I don't have to start over with somebody else. So something that's this sort of routine and fundamental. The clinical stuff we keep, but the billing, so you do what you do well, which is the clinical, and then let somebody else do that.
So I want to touch on another point as it relates to the COVID crisis.
Okay.
Right? So we know that one of the things that makes you more susceptible to COVID is if you've got a compromised immune system.
Okay. Yeah.
That's the underlying condition issue, right? Well, everybody that has sleep apnea has a compromised immune system. And so that sleep apnea is creating the situation where you become someone with an underlying condition. And so being able to provide a solution to that coming out of this, especially in the next 6 to 12 to 18 months, being able to talk to your patients about what sleep apnea does and how it directly affects your immune system, and that you've got a potential solution to that to make them feel better, to make them stronger. That's going to be a big conversation.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be a conversation that from a sales perspective converts well. And so that's going to be one of those, coming out of it stronger scenarios, right? If you can now have something in your practice that is going to make them healthier, then healthier and stronger and more resistant to all viruses, really, then you're going to be you're going to be appreciated more. You're going to be doing a better service. You're going to be giving higher quality of care. All of those things, all those reasons that you got into dentistry in the first place to help people, you're going to be able to do at a completely higher level.
So what's a couple things? What's the value of a sleep patient, number one, and number two, how do I integrate them with my dental patients?
So the short answer is the value is about $6,000 for a sleep patient in bottom line profit. So
nice cosmetic case over and over and over and over and over without, doing any, without, prepping 8 teeth.
Right.
Okay.
However, the lifetime value of that patient is them and those that they refer.
Okay. Yeah.
And we were talking a little bit about this before. Nothing in dentistry can compete with the viral effect of somebody getting their first good night's sleep in 35 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
When I got into treatment, and woke up for the first time that I can ever remember in my life without an alarm and wanting to press snooze.
Mm-hmm.
I woke up before my alarm and I was ready to go. I'd never known what a good night's sleep felt like until I got into treatment. And so, I mean, I can go all the way back until I was a kid. Struggled every day getting out of school, getting out of bed for school.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have patients, not a patient, but we have patients that consistently will get on social media without us asking them. I had sent a patient to our clinic over in Orem, Utah. And a couple days later, I get a couple months later, actually, when she came in for her visit, she attached me to her Facebook post, which was pictures of her son at the office before and after. And this is 2 months. And the transformation that he had in 2 months was amazing. She just totally praised the doctor, was so grateful for him, and talked about how her son is now sleeping and he's just a totally different child. And she posted these before and after pictures. His posture was completely different, because he was no longer trying to put his head forward to breathe.
Right.
Back in normal posture. And this was, children transform really quickly, right?
Right.
I didn't, as an adult, you're not going to get transformation like that in 2 months, but as a child, he did. And so, I mean, under that Facebook post, there was, where did you get this done? How can I get my son in to see this doctor?
Right.
Can you give me the name and number? And, we've gotten multiple other patients out of that one Facebook post.
So Corbin, so you don't think like a patient leaves a dental office and, pulls out a camera and says, hey guys, to their 800 followers, hey, check out this zirconia crown on number 3.
Yeah.
Like, you don't think that happens?
That doesn't happen.
Yeah. That makes sense. It is something that you can get, and you said it a while ago. I think the, whatever you want to call the practice, complete health, there's a dialogue that's going to come with new patients. There's a dialogue. In fact, I tag little newspaper articles, or not newspaper, but, New York Times articles or whatever on my phone to read later. And one of them was about the new McDonald's, what McDonald's will look like going forward. And I started it. And so I clicked a little flag and said, I need to really look at this. It's completely different. So even, in fact, the guy who's, I'm in a business condo unit, the guy next door owns Taco Bell restaurants. And we were standing up front yesterday talking, and he said his business is up like tremendous, like 50 to 100%. But not only that, his dining rooms are closed. That is all drive-through. And he said, he was sort of thinking out loud, and he said, if there's a way that we could just do away with the dining room, he said, I'm doing the math. I can do twice the business with half the employees. He said, the drive-through takes a handful of people.
Yep.
The inside, I have to have somebody clean it, empty trash cans, mop the floors, check the tables, do all this stuff. That's because of a health, health awareness with customers who happen to also go to a dentist, who are going to have that exact same awareness when they come into the dentist. So there's the whole PPE conversation and the whole, infection control and their new awareness. But I really think it goes beyond that. Maybe you can, kind of comment on that. I think it's more than infection control. I think as it goes forward, they look at their dentist. Let me put it this way. If you're their dentist and you're not talking about them or to them in a broader healthcare perspective, the guy down the street is, because somebody is having a sort of a broader conversation. And you're right. My dentist never brought that up. Yeah, I wake up, I wake up sweating in the night, and I wake up, with a headache, and I wake up this way. What does that mean? And that's how we share information, and that's how you build your brand and your, how you're seen in the community. So,
about those patients that I got from that Facebook post.
Yeah.
they came to my clinic, right? They already have a dentist, right?
Right. Right.
So they came, and now we're having a different conversation,
Mm-hmm.
and they're getting a different kind of experience at my practice. And then they go back to their old practice, and none of those conversations are having. What is the likelihood that they're going to want to change practices?
Right.
Very high, right?
Well, and it's almost, I was always intrigued by the evolution of dentistry, and the 40s, 50s, even into the 60s. I mean, there were a lot of dentists and a lot of, without naming names, of giant dental organizations that poo-pooed the idea of hygiene in a dental office.
Right.
Now you don't even give it a second thought. But we had to convince people that if you took care of your teeth, that losing your teeth was preventable. My dad was 15 years old playing football, got one of his teeth knocked out, went to the dentist, and the dentist said, you're going to be in dentures anyway one day. My dad's been in dentures since he was 15. The dentist just pulled them all. And, today we would think, holy cow, that doc ought to be it'd be a malpractice suit.
Right.
But in the 40s, I mean, that's what they did.
Yeah.
So that sort of paradigm shift, to use an overused word, I think is happening in dentistry. And you poo-poo that and say, yeah, we're just taking care of teeth, and we're tooth doctors or gum gardeners, or, number one, as somebody competing with a large DSO organization, just down the street, this is something they can't do. It'll take them years to standardize and roll out sleep treatment in 1,200 offices or 500 offices. So that begs the question right there. If I'm watching this, how long would it take me to sort of get up and going?
So, especially with, if you want really put the effort into it, you can get up and going in 60 days.
Okay. That's clinical, marketing, practice. That's kind of all of it.
We've been forced to adapt to the world of no events.
Mm-hmm.
All trainings used to be live at Vivos, and you'd come to Denver and you'd get that immersion experience, and now we put all the training online. There still will be the opportunity to come to live events once we're legally allowed to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll get both. You'll get the online and the in-person training. But for doctors that have attended the summit that we put on, which is a free educational event to really kind of get you to the point where you can decide whether you want to even pursue this. We started holding those, at the very beginning of April. We've already got doctors that are going through the virtual trainings now, that as soon as they're really able to open up, and some of them are, they've attended the two main courses of training, and they're ready to go. So they're ready to start seeing patients with the support of their integrated network of provider of support, their clinical provider and clinical advisor and their practice advisor. And so 60 days is an aggressive timeline for sure, but it can definitely be done in 60 days, 90 days for sure.
And that really is, when you were saying that, part of me wanted to say, wow, it takes that long. But part of me also wanted to say, that's probably why you go to a clinical course, get all excited. I call them the University of the Marriott. I spend a bunch of money, go to a course, come back and hand my front desk manager a book and say, all right, Jane, we're going to start doing this. And, a year later you bump into them at the Hinman and they say, but like I said, that doesn't work. So it probably is worth, it's worth that much time to do it right, maybe. So
you don't have to wait 60 days to start screening your patients.
Right. You can, as you come back next week, you can start,
having those conversations,
dialogue. Okay.
And as soon as you get through like the summit and you decide you want to do this and you get signed up to become a provider with Vivos, we can start, having the conversations and, talking to your staff about what to say, what questions to start asking, and once you go through the summit, you're going to start seeing it in your patients everywhere.
Okay.
You're going to start seeing the signs, and it's going to become so obvious that you're going to have a list of patients to talk to and have deeper conversations with as soon as you get ready to treat.
Okay. So they had one of my notes here was was ask about the summit. And you, as you said, you have transitioned a lot of these from, okay, fly out to Denver for, I don't know if how long it is, it's a day, but I've got down here, you give CE credit, you have a monthly, and May 22nd, what
May
is today?
22nd is the next summit.
Okay. So which is a week from today. We're recording this. It'll probably go, we're recording this on Friday. It'll probably go out tomorrow. So anybody watching and it's that timely, if you're watching before May 22nd, the next one's May 22nd and it's 7 CE credits. Is that right?
CE credits. It's
Okay.
2 days of live digital content.
Okay.
Live Q&A, really, really good kind of immersion in sleep type training. You're going to get to see a lot of, case studies and, not just lecture type stuff, right? It's really good content.
What does that cost? I mean, do you charge for that or?
It's normally like $495.
Okay.
But if they email me at ccowan@vivoslife.com, CCOWAN @vivoslife.com, then I can get them a code and get them into the training complimentary.
Oh, cool. Okay. CCOWAN @vivoslife.com. I'll put that in the show notes.
Okay.
Now, if somebody misses that and it's June, how often, how often did you used to do them? How often are you going to do them now?
We've been doing them every week practically.
Okay.
We've done 5 or 6 of them since the shutdown.
Yeah.
We'll get to the point where we're doing them monthly is the
Okay.
plan. Right now, the next one after the 22nd will probably be somewhere in the first part of June, so 2 weeks.
So somebody can email you and say, hey, it's, June 3rd and I'm just now seeing this, when's your next one? They can reach out and still, okay, awesome. I appreciate that. Yeah, that is, we talked beforehand and I've done a lot of these. And one of the things that I'm seeing in practice owners, as opposed to dentists, I told you, I speak a lot and I speak on the dentist mindset and the practice owner mindset. And, in this series and in what I do with my magazine, The Profitable Dentist, we put the dentist part aside. I always joke around and I say, you went to dental school and your university gave you a diploma. So they thought you were good enough. You had all you needed to be a good dentist. And then you went back to Colorado, you went back to Colorado and your states, you took a test and your state said you're good enough. So you got all the clinical skills you need to be a dentist. But where you struggle is the business side. And this is one of those things that, they wouldn't teach you this in dental school. But I do really believe, I don't want to get too out in the clouds here, but I think that at some point in the future, there are a lot of dental medical school integrations. There are dental students going on medical rounds, and there are medical students sitting through dental courses to get an understanding how they fit together. And there are a couple of universities now that really marry I was trying to think of the one about lifestyle, medical lifestyle university or college of medical lifestyle. It basically is saying, look, we're going to look at your whole body. We're going to look at it in a preventive way rather than a reactive way. And I think, my kids are from 20 to 24. I think by the time their kids come along, it'll just be part of it. Dental office will be maybe a health diagnosis office for physicians, because at the end of the day, physicians don't look for this unless you come in symptomatic. Now, if you have a stroke, they're going to ask you all kinds of questions, and they're going to try and figure it out. And like you said, you've got a hole in your heart you live with, every day. They don't look for it until something happens. And, I've got a really good friend who's a cardiologist in Columbus, and, my cardiologist, and he said it took him, and he's very big in the complete health movement. His wife's a dentist, and they have a joint practice. And he said, for all these years I've treated patients. He said, I was the sort of like preventive care cardiologist. And he said, I was treating people who had already had a heart attack, because now we know they're susceptible, they're prone to having a heart attack. He said, but what occurred to me one day is I was only treating the 53% of people who didn't die from the first heart attack. Yeah. So how's that preventive? All I'm trying to do is keep you alive from the second one, because I think it's some crazy number, 80-something% die from their second heart attack. And he said, I stepped back and said, I've been a cardiologist my whole life, never thought about it like that. But we can go back and prevent it. Like you said, you can prevent strokes and heart attacks. And this is one way. I mean, sleep treatment is becoming one of those things that is more powerful than we thought it was, and can be treated in a dental office.
I want to say one more thing about Vivos. We have our treatment, and we obviously believe it's the highest standard of care, but we are not anti any other devices. Okay. There are other good devices out there that serve a purpose, and so if you're already, if some of your your people listening here are already using a device and they're like, well, I don't know if I want to integrate another one. We tell people, keep doing what you're doing. Just add this as another option. Because we want to make sure that all the providers out there know that we don't have our doctors stop doing something in order to do Vivos.
So if they've got, over the past 3 years, they have 20 grand in clinical courses in sleep, and, have seen 3 patients, and again, sitting around saying, I got all this training, and, the patients aren't coming to me. It's not, you're not saying, you've got to use our device to use our program or our system. So it kind of works with, the concept of sleep works with Vivos no matter what.
Absolutely. And your knowledge is going to be very applicable. And the devices that you're using, you can continue to use, but you're going to have a secondary option, an option to take the treatment to more of curative solution as opposed to a palliative solution. Okay. But I get doctors all the time that talk to me and call me and say, well, I love that. I'm getting good results with the ELF appliance.
Yeah.
Keep getting those great results. Keep doing what is working. But there's going to be a certain segment of your practice that ELF device is not going to work as well that our device will. And so we want to give you total education, complete education, and give you all the options that you have available to make sure that you can give the highest standard of care to your patient. And that's it.
Okay. Yeah, that's I hadn't thought of that beforehand, and that happens a lot, in dentistry is, my way's the best way, and you have to kick that out to use this. And at the end of the day, all that clinical training does nothing if you're not seeing the patients. I mean, if you're, 30 grand worth of clinical training to see, your test patient when you signed up for the course, and 3 years later, that's all you've ever seen, that's your practice owner side again over here that should be saying, listen, I need to if I spend 20 grand on, on understanding the clinical piece of it, I should get 60 grand or 80 grand in at least treatment off of it the first year. And then everything after that is sort of, integrates into my regular patient care. So, so do you guys, one last question here I had, do you, and I didn't have my note here, how do you integrate sleep patients in? I think do you suggest docs see sleep patients a certain day? see them along with their dental patients? How do you, do you have a thought on that, or?
Yeah, so our practice advisors typically work to create a plan with the dentist
Okay.
that works for them. But what we've seen is that a lot of times, they'll begin in hygiene, getting the questionnaires filled out and that kind of thing.
Okay.
We have an education process that we teach that they can then invite those patients that may be good candidates to an educational type of an event, and we educate them there. And then we generally recommend that you book most of your sleep patients on starting with 1 day.
Okay.
And then most of our guys that are really going at it, they have a couple of days of sleep that they see primarily their sleep patients on those days. They'll still do a crown, or they'll still do an emergency, or they'll still fill in some general dentistry those days as well, but they book them during those days.
Yeah, you almost have to think, if I was, if I'm a doc, I can schedule, I can manage things a little bit. I can schedule, maybe I work 2 days in the dental side. I have a couple of restorative chairs, and I bring in an associate who handles those other 2 days. And then I see sleep patients, or some combination where, dentistry is hard. Dentistry is physically hard.
Right. We've got the guys that they'll bring in an associate and they just want to start focusing on sleep. We've got some of the complete health providers that we're working with that are already having that more complete health conversation. They don't have to do much because they're already having the conversations, and they're just integrating it right in. They're not isolating days or anything, because they're having the conversations, and it's just another appointment on the books for them.
Right.
And so they're seeing them just intermixed with all their other patients, and it's working just fine. So it really depends on kind of what rhythm the dentist wants to get into.
Right.
If he wants to bring on an associate, if it's a good time for that, then we're going to help them integrate that process and those processes into the practice. And that's what's so great about the support system that we provide, is that we provide that coaching and that infrastructure to be able to kind of talk to another provider that's doing it, see what they're doing. If that's what you like to do, then we can help you implement that part of the process into your practice.
Okay. Yeah. And if you're of my vintage, there's a lot less wear and tear on your eyes, your back, your hand, and your elbows doing sleep than it is, prepping crowns all day. So, and I hear that a lot. Is the reason I bring that up. I hear a lot of dentists, practice owners, who say, I'm doing it because by the time I'm X, 50 or 55 or 60, I need to transition out of these things that are just beating me up physically, and still do them because I have an associate doing them. I'm still using my brand and my practice and my investment and overhead, but I can now do things that add incremental income and revenue and are less stressful on me as a clinician. So I think that I see that strategy a lot.
The other thing for those guys that are, maybe toward the tail end of their career, if you implement this now in your practice and you're going to sell your practice in 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now,
okay,
it's going to have a significant impact on the value of your sale, the value of your practice at sale. Significant.
Yeah.
Because it's gonna add so much bottom line to your practice, because your overhead's already being covered, you're already making money in your practice, and this is just additional on top of that goes straight to the bottom line. It has a dramatic effect on what you can get out of the sale of your practice. That's a big deal.
And the medical, I do a lot of interviews with the medical dental billing people, And I know Christine Taxon, who I love Christine. It's what she does. She was showing me earlier that even the forms now and the codes are starting to merge, where, you know, there's one form and one sheet and one code and one platform for just billing insurance, whether it's medical or dental. So that idea, I think, we're going to be billing more medical treatment inside of your dental practice anyway. Yeah. So this is a way to kind of get started and get used to it. And, you know, and there's a lot of things you're doing now, I think, I understand that you could be billing that you're not. So it's a good way to sort of dabble or get into that. So, Corbin, I appreciate it. You know, we went over time, but who cares? It's good. You know, like I said at the beginning, this is, you know, it's a new time in dentistry. You know, the docs who think they're just going to say, oh, thank goodness I got a text from, you know, my governor or the president and said, all clear, you can come out now, and went back and started, are going to struggle a little bit. And if they're doing that 90 days or at the end of 2020, they're going to struggle more. You have to be looking bigger than what you were doing. And in my prediction, because your patients are. Right. And if you're not, again, you know, the guy down the street is. So, I mean, there were a lot of docs in the 1950s and 60s who said, you know, that hygiene will never catch on. And guess what? You know, the doc up the street who came out of dental school and they were teaching hygiene, you know, they took your patients. So it's another evolution. Some of them are nice and smooth and have a growth curve like this. Some of them are jagged and, you know, like this. And I think we're living through one of those. So, you know, I think it'll be a dramatic change.
I'll just leave your audience with this. Whatever you do, whether you do Vivos or anything else, start having the conversations, because I promise you there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of your patients that were just like me, that had no idea that they had sleep problems, that are at risk for heart attacks and strokes and other complications from sleep apnea. Mm-hmm. And you are in a perfect position to at least have the opening conversation. Even if all you do is refer them out to another sleep provider, another medical doctor or something, start having the conversation about sleep in your practice, and it will have an effect on your bottom line regardless.
I think you'll also be surprised at the response you get from patients. Absolutely. I think it'll be more positive than you might be afraid of having if you've never had it. You know, and I went through a similar circumstance, and I'm going to tell you, a light bulb goes off and you say, I've done this for years. I think your patients see that as, I think it's valuable to them, and it deepens their relationship with you as a dentist. And maybe they'll be surprised enough maybe that's a thing they share. You know, there's a referral right there. You know, start having these conversations. What do you know? I went to the dentist and found out, you know, had sleep apnea and, you know, was predisposed to stroke, heart attack, and all kinds of other stuff. So great message. So I'm going to post C. Cowan, C-C-O-W-A-N @vivoslife.com. What's the website that they can go to? Vivoslife.com?
Vivoslife.com.
Okay. And I would assume you have resources there that, you know, they can check out?
Absolutely.
Okay. And then the summit, which is, you know, used to be in Denver, which is really awesome, but, you know, you get to save airfare in a hotel, but you don't get to go to Denver, is online May 22nd. And if they just reach out to you, you'll give a code so it's free. It's complimentary.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Okay. So that's got to be worth, I mean, you know, if it were February or January, you're into this for $495, airfare, hotel, some meals. So this is a pretty good way if you were ever going to learn how to integrate sleep in your practice. This is probably time to do it.
Absolutely.
So awesome.
And 7 CE credits.
Yeah. On top of that, 7 free CE credits. So, and, you know, in Indiana, that's almost half of what you need for a year. So
good.
Awesome. Corbin, I appreciate it. I mostly appreciate you. I mean, I was sitting here thinking when you were telling me this, you know, yesterday you were, because you got, I mean, you were, were you intubated?
I was intubated, put to sleep. Yeah.
Yesterday.
Yesterday.
So I appreciate you sticking to the schedule. I do have to say, if you had, texted me or something and said, hey, listen, I'm about to go under, they're going to stick a hose down my throat and, wire up my arteries and fix a hole in my heart, can we reschedule? I would have said yes. So,
I appreciate it, but this is now a passion project for me.
Yeah.
And, I didn't want to delay getting the message out, because I think I can help a lot of dentists, and in turn, they can help a lot of their patients. And so it means a lot to have the platform that you've provided for me. So thank you. I look forward to working with any of your friends and associates that come through this.
There you go. So practice owners, anybody who's watching, there's a lot of resources. I think this is as good as almost like a sleep course, aside from the clinical, that you can get, or at least get started on. So Corbin, I appreciate you coming on and doing that for us, or for the Profitable Dentist readers and listeners and viewers.
Thank you.
So practice owners, hang in there. If you're not back to, if your practice isn't open yet, you're close, it's within smelling distance. And as you do come back, I think it's a good idea to step back and look at the things look down the road a little bit. What do they say? Wayne Gretzky's, they asked him how he was so, I don't know if you know this, and we don't have hockey here in Louisville, Kentucky, but I understand the concept. But they asked Wayne Gretzky, how he was so good at hockey. And he said, well, I just really do one thing. He said, I don't look at where the puck is. I look at where the puck's going to go, and then I go there before everybody else. And I think, I don't know exactly where it is, but I do feel very adamantly that medical treatment will be integrated into the dental world faster now that for our coronavirus situation, as it gets behind us, it's going to integrate faster. So,
absolutely.
So take advantage of that. And until next time, practice owners, thanks for tuning in. And Corbin, thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.